I actually chose between becoming a fighter pilot or into IT. They spent quite a bit of money paying me for giving them advice and helping them, but I told them lots of things, and they were good things, but they never did it. And sometimes you have to kill things that are not making money, because I believe 80% of all businesses are the same. It's the 10 to 20% that makes a difference. I'm also looking into AI, but it should be there to support the human and not make decisions instead of the human.
Welcome to another episode of Be Aware, but Don't Care. Today, Fabrizio sits down with a seasoned entrepreneur and turnaround expert, Mats Lundkvist. From rescuing struggling businesses to navigating the shifting landscapes of AI, crypto, and global economies, Mats brings powerful insight and no-nonsense advice for anyone ready to level up.
Well, I grew up in Norway, born and raised in Oslo. So I was born up with hiking and skis on my legs, which they say they all do in Norway.
Okay.
I was there in about 20-ish, and then my parents moved to Sweden due to some work.
Okay.
And then I moved to Sweden as well, and I found my wife, and then I sort of got stuck here. So
So tell me a bit, because for those that are watching, is there a difference between the language they speak in Norway and the one in Sweden? Is it similar?
Yeah.
Is it different?
There is, but I mean, we normally understand Norwegians 80 to 90% and vice versa. There are differences, of course, but I would say, yeah, depending on if it's a huge dialect, if you come up north there, the dialect is pretty, difficult to understand for foreigners. But like Oslo and Stockholm, the two main capitals, they can understand each other to 80, 90%.
Okay, so is it like English and American then?
Well, it's a bit bigger difference, but yeah. But it's a bigger culture change difference though than what people think. So
Okay, let's expand onto that then. Tell us about the culture difference between Norway and Sweden, because this is an interesting one.
yeah, so Sweden is Norway is a bit more I would say nationalistic. Norway has actually been into war, and that sort of puts them in the thing that they're proud of their country. They celebrate their national holidays and things like that. So it makes the culture a bit different, and they're also a bit more sales-ish, I would say. Sweden has been an industrial country for many, many years. It's been a socialistic country for, since the founding of it. And it makes the culture quite different, more than people would actually think, at least business-wise, but also sort of the day-to-day things.
So you would say Norway's more like America and Sweden's more like Europe?
I would say so, yes. That's a generalization, but yeah.
That's interesting. So how did you decide to study information technology? I know you went to university and studied that. What I mean, was it when you were growing up, you were interested in computers, technology? I mean, how did that come about?
Yeah, I was interested in IT. I had a computer to start out with, back in the days when modems were a thing, and you sort of, it's always been something interesting. So I actually chose between becoming a fighter pilot, which I always wanted to do, or into IT. And living in Norway at that time, the way to become a fighter pilot or a helicopter pilot was through the military and living for up north and things like that. So I just decided from a family perspective that it was better to go into the IT sector, to be honest. And yeah, I haven't looked back. I thought it was a good decision. I like it.
So tell us about your first career steps and what got you into business turnarounds, because you started with IT and then you got into business turnarounds. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so I started out as a developer actually for some software and did some trainings in software and things like that. But my focus on school was also strategic IT management. So that's I was more into the leadership and management part. And since my mom and dad has been into business and leadership for many years, it's I have it in the blood somehow. I started out as a consultant on technical aspects. Then I sort of got into the management part, like project manager and things like that. And I loved it. And I did a decent job. And then I became a sort of what you call a management consultant. So I helped different businesses all around, everything from H&M to big companies to smaller mid-sized companies. And I got a bit annoyed because they spent quite a bit of money paying me for giving them advice and helping them. But the problem was the execution, right? They actually never, I told them lots of things and they were good things, but they never did it. And it wasn't only me, it was a lot of other consultants they brought in. They had these massive charts and massive analysis and all that kind of stuff, but it never sort of turn into anything, you know?
So they're paying you all this money to go in to tell them what to do, and then they're not doing it.
Yeah. Or they do like 2% and it doesn't really change. I mean, that happens all the time in the consultancy world, and it's just one of the major issues. Or they get one of these bigger companies, consultant companies like Accenture, or one of these bigger ones in the US or Europe, that comes in and gives you an analysis that's this thick, you know, at 5,000 pages, and it takes you forever to implement, and they only implement 2%, and 90% don't understand what it's all about. So I decided to, well, why don't I get into business turnaround? I sort of, I found up a course. I went with a training with a guy, went there for about a week, and he was teaching me about how to buy and sell businesses and things like that. And yeah, I found it, well, why don't I just buy the business, and then they can't really, then I can force them to do the change that is needed to be done. So that's sort of how I
Okay.
came into it.
Tell us about your first business turnaround. What company was it? Where was it? What products did they have, and how did that whole thing pan out?
I've done quite a few, but I mean, I did, well, most of my business turnarounds I did in the UK. And the reason for that is just because that's the laws I got. The training I went to was based on UK law and UK businesses, and it's quite favorable for that kind of things. So to be honest, I can't really remember exactly which one was the first one,
Well,
but
tell us about one in particular that you enjoyed, and that, or maybe.
yes. So I've been into different sectors. So let's say we brought an IT company, for example, an IT training company, which is the company probably I held on for the longest. So the company had been losing money for a year and a half, and they were not doing too well. So
What was the reason why they weren't doing too well?
well, to be honest, most of these companies that are turned around, there's some commonalities among them, I would say.
Yeah,
And, and that's, it might be a bit brutal, but most of the time it's management, you know, management and
it's the
leadership.
people then. It's the people the problem.
Yeah, it's the people. It's been mismanaged, and the people, either they're stuck in old ways of doing things, or they have a hard time sort of seeing what needs to be done. And sometimes it's been successful what they've done previously, but they're not able to change to new things. So that's sort of the major issue. So for this guy that owned this company, he had a very good company, sort of name wise. It had good reputation and everything, but he wasn't making any money. So he basically had too much cost, and his sort of setup was wrong, and a few of these things. So basically, we came in, and after 3 months, it was made profitable. So we would turn around within 3 months. So it started to make money.
So what did you do to change the way they did things then? To go from not making money to making money? What was the change? Did you fire some people, bring in new people? You change the process, the product? What did you do?
So it's quite interesting because what people find, you know, when they go and approach a company that's not doing too well, what they're most afraid of, there are two things they ask. Well, what you going to do? Because they're really afraid of what we're going to do, right? And then they also ask, are you going to fire everyone? And then that way save the money. And I said, well, normally we don't fire a lot of people. Obviously, it might be one or two that needs to be fired, but it's a matter of changing the culture, changing the processes, and things like that. And that's what we do with all the companies. And um, of course, they also ask exactly what are you going to do, and I tell, well, I'm not going to tell you the secret sauce of what we're doing, because that's our sort of, that's our business. Normally, it comes down to two or three things. It's financial engineering. And what I mean by that is getting the accounts into order, making sure the suppliers are paid not too early, not too late, and just making. And there's a few things you can do, and within the finances, that sort of frees up cash, you know, and make things like that. And it's also asset protection. You protect what you have, and sometimes you have to do things like flip around one company in order to make it profitable in another part. And there's a few things like that. But and you do that in combination with changing of attitude and culture and processes, because the way you got into the problem, you have to change that in order to get out of it. So they might be doing something for a long time. Well, we always done it this way, right? You probably heard that before in your life. And the problem is that you always be doing it that way. And sure, if it works fine, then you can do it. But a lot of the times you have to change. So why do you always do it that way? So yeah, you have so many good examples of that. just today in politics or whatever kind of things it is in business, people keep on doing the same thing all the time and they expect different results. So that's what we do. Change the process, look at it. Why do you do this? And how can you do it to change? And sometimes you have to kill things that are not making money. There's a great book that called it talks about kill your babies. Basically, it's about sometimes you have to kill the things you really like, but it's because it's not really making any money. So it's being a bit brutal, and that's a good thing about coming from outside, right? You're coming in, and if the company's not making money, you're coming in as the good guy, and they sort of let you do a few things that the old management wouldn't do because you're basically saving them jobs and saving the company. So you have a bit of leverage on that and some slack to do things. Obviously not
So when you
not.
got into this IT company, you turned it around. What did you do after? Did you sell it or did you keep it?
So that's one of the few companies I've actually kept. I kept it for like 10 years and I made a good living out of that for about 10 years. All the other companies we flipped around, we sold them or given it back to the owner. So sometimes it's been sold back to the owners or given back to them after we made it profitable again.
So what kind of X do you do on these? Is it 3x, 4x, 5x? When you go in, you buy it 1,000, sell it then for 5. I mean, what's usually what kind of
Yeah,
return are you looking at when you look at a project?
so these it's been a bit different because these companies, all of the companies that I turn around, I basically bought for nothing. We basically bought them for £1 or £100 or yeah, it's a small amount of money. And so we've taken the risk, taking on it, and then
Okay, so Matt, let's just stop a second. So for someone that's listening and watching this, and they hear you can buy a company for nothing, can you explain how you do that? Because that's kind of a bit controversial. He bought a company for nothing and turned it around and made money out of it. How does that work?
buying a company for £1 and turning it around. It's the thing is the company is in debt, right? So one of the challenges with buying a company is you come to the seller that are in distress, and he has a thought about what the value is. He's put on a lot of years, he's put a lot of sweat equity, and he thinks, yeah, the company's worth a lot of money, right? But it, then we have to be a bit brutal and nice, of course, and say, well, to be honest, I mean, the company isn't making any money, so it doesn't really matter if you put in all the sweat and done all that. It's still not making money. And so what we normally do is we go in and say, well, you have a lot of debt, you have a lot of challenges, so we'll take that off your back, right? So
Oh,
basically,
so you take the debt, and that's how you buy the company.
yeah, we take the company and we take the debt off there, and then the thing that we can do with financial engineering makes it possible for us to sort of more or less get rid of the debt and also get some inflow in if they have cash flow, we can sort of hoard that and use that as investment capital going forward. So that's some of the nitty gritty things that we can do, and it's not time or the place to go into sort of all the exact details, but it's all
I,
it,
I
it's
guess
all a
you
matter of basically negotiating because since the company isn't making any money, and sometimes they want some kind of money, right? So we have these assets, right? They're worth something. So you can do different things with that. Either you can mortgage the asset to get some finances, right? So that will give you some money that you could give to the seller, but you're still not putting in your own money, and you're basically buying it for the company's own money uh, down the road. That's what I went for this training for. It sort of changed the way that I see things.
Yeah. So when you buy a company, what do? You keep the owner on board, or do you
So
get
we
rid?
so normally we try to keep we get the owner is put out. Well, he's not put out to pasture, but he's not into the day-to-day things, right? And the reason for that is that he's the one that put the company in the place where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
he's
if
the problem, basically. The owner's the problem.
yeah, well, most of the times, at least it depends on if the owner is active in the company. Sometimes you have a passive owner and he just put management in place, and then of course the owner can stay, but the management have to go. But if it's a smaller sized company and owner is also the guy that does the business day to day, we would normally give him an option to sort of get the company back, buy us out, or we would give him an option to keep X amount of percent of the company, just to give him a bit of incentive because we still want his knowledge. He's been around in the business for many years. He has he has a great sort of history about it. And if we use that the right way and with some new thoughts and ideas, then that can be sort of a good way to go forward.
So Mats, what kind of sectors do you like investing in then?
Well, I'm what you call sector agnostic. The reason for being that is because I believe 80% of all businesses are the same, and it's the 10 to 20% that makes a difference. So if you're in IT, construction, manufacturing, business services, whatever you are in, 80 to 90% of that is just doing business is about the same. It's the last 10 to 20% that is sector specific. And that knowledge you can always acquire, you can get someone in there or buy it. So I mean, I've been to IT companies, I turned around construction companies, manufacturing companies, I've done architect firms, and so it's all kinds of different sectors and areas. And for me, it's more about the opportunity to set up and how the company looks than what kind of sector it is. But what I found out as well is quite interesting because I was told this, but I never actually it never sunk in. But it's the same amount of work for a company with a revenue of a couple of £1 million as it is for a company with £100 million.
Yeah, sure.
So I have to do the same kind of work. Of course, it might be slightly different. It's a bit more politics in a big company, but it's the same kind of work I have to do. So I had some smaller turnarounds previously, but now if I'm going to look at a company, I want to have a bigger one because I get more bang for the buck. It's
I mean, it's interesting you say that because I'm in aircraft sales, and I find that the more expensive the airplane, the easier the deal is to do. Um, if the plane's $40 million and you've got a client buying a $40 million airplane, they are easier to deal with than the guy that's buying a plane for $4 million. I
it's
mean,
the same in business actually because it's if we've had some professional buyers or sellers, it's a bigger company that has a proper board and owners and things like that. When you buy a company for them, they're a lot more easy to deal with because there's not that much emotions in it. They know that if the company isn't making money, it's not that profitable. But if you're speaking to a guy that's been invested in the company, it's a sort of mom and pop company or something like that, then it's a lot more emotion in it. It's a lot more difficult.
yeah. So, what challenges do you see in today's business world? I mean, obviously, the scene has changed. We now have these phones. We've got social media. Everyone's connected to everyone, or almost. What challenges do you see in today's business world and moving forward within that
Challenges. I would
business?
say the greatest challenge is actually being able to handle change, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, no matter what you do, because things change, You can just take what's just happened now in the US. They changed government, and where I live in Sweden, they change the laws all the time and things like that. So I would say being able to cope with change is actually one of the biggest challenges you have. And that could be changes in laws. It could be changes in customer sort of wants and needs. Yeah, it's just I would say and the change happens quicker, and if you're not able to adapt to it, then you will definitely have some challenges. And that's what we're seeing also with the businesses that we buy. That a lot of these are sort of they try to give them bronze medicine. It's like they're trying to they don't want to change, so they try to keep some old business alive that's not really doesn't really have any life left in it.
Yeah. So now there's a lot of talk about AI at the moment, and you're an information technologist. What can you say to those that are watching and listening to this about integrating AI into your business? Is it important? Is it not important? Do we need to get our head around this AI? Is it going to take over the world? Or is it something that we can use and work with?
I always believe that technology should be there to help and support people and not the other way around. Meaning that I think AI is good if it's used the right way. But also, what I've found is it's one of the things that I find annoying with companies these days is they've sort of forgotten some of the core values like customer service and actually being able to speak to a person. Nothing annoys me more than going into a company online or somewhere else, and there's just no way of getting hold of them. You might send them an email, they might reply to you within a day or two, but there's sort of no dialogue, and you can't really call someone or chat with someone. And I think sure, you can have AI that could probably help out in those aspects. And to be honest, I use ChatGPT all the time to write text and do kind of things like that. so it can help me with it. But I still think that the service and human aspect is something that can make it. It could be business changing. It can be one of your USPs for your company that you actually have a service. You can actually speak to a human being. But AI is definitely here to stay, and you just got to use it the right way. Like I said, I use it sometimes for different kinds of things, and some of the projects I do, I'm also looking into AI. But it should be there to support the human and not make decisions instead of the humans. That's
Yeah,
my
and of
take.
course, now your new business, you're into blockchain, crypto. How important do you think is the blockchain and cryptocurrency going to be for the future?
I think it is the future. I mean, it's gotten a bit of a bad rap sometimes, the blockchain and crypto, but it's also it
Yeah,
has.
but the bad raps because people don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's
They don't
right.
do their homework. So they just read something in the newspaper. They read a headline that Bitcoin's a scam, and they just that they register that in their brain, and that's it. They don't bother to go and find out, the origin of Bitcoin, how it's produced, what the blockchain is. But when you actually look into it, it's a fascinating world.
Absolutely. And the problem is like with all new technology, and all new things, there's always a resistance to change. I'm coming back to that same kind of application, it's change is something unknown. We don't really know. It's unsecure. So I don't know how to handle it. I speak to people every week, and I say I'm into crypto, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't know much about it, but it looks cool, it's this unknowledge about it. But I do believe blockchain and crypto will be the future, but it has to be consolidated. Right now, there's like too many coins, too many tokens, too many things out there. So I think there will be a major consolidation, and we'll have to get the usability out of it. To be honest, I'm a bit surprised that some of these bigger players in for example, the US or the EU has not adapted crypto more than it has. I mean, if they were to do that, that would, let's say if Amazon were to start taking any kind of crypto payment, that would make a big change on that field.
I mean, we know now President Trump has said that he wants America to become the crypto capital of the world. So there's going to be a change there. And as America comes on board with crypto, I think it will have a knock on effect on the rest of the world. Now, you mentioned before laws changing and how you need to adapt in that. How important is politics in the business world? I mean, how does politics influence the business world? Is it something that as a business person you need to look into, or is it something to just be aware but don't care kind of thing? Or do you really need to understand what's happening from a geopolitical standpoint because it will influence your business? What's your take on all this?
I'm For me, it's very important how politics are being handled because it will affect me down the road, no matter what I do. Specifically, where you incorporate your company, and like you mentioned, I'm into the crypto world, so for me, legislation and things like that is quite important. So I need to find somewhere that has the right amount of legislation, so I'm free enough to do what I need to do, and but still being able to have some kind of structure. So I think that's going to be a vital competitive advantage for some countries going forward, I would say, just because if you have a company that treat companies well and help innovation instead of hinder innovation, I think that would be that is vital. So for me, I'm definitely into that. So that's why Sweden is. I don't have much business in Sweden because I don't think it's a very good for businesses maybe to start up in and things like that, but it's not very conducive due to all the laws and regulations and compliance and things you have. And you have the same problems with a lot of countries, at least in the beginning. And if you see more of the bigger companies, even Swedish companies, don't have the headquarters in Sweden anymore, or in the EU for that matter, because it's just too complicated.
Yeah, and today, with these devices, we can connect and gain information just
Yeah,
like. So if you find out that there's a certain country where there's a new, let's take Argentina, for example, they've
yeah,
had a change politically, and the new prime minister, president, whatever they call him, has kind of opened business. I was talking to an Argentinian man the other day in church, and he was telling me, I've been away from Argentina for the last 10, 15 years, but I'm actually thinking of moving back because the economy is starting to open now and it's starting to be in favor of businesses. And so you want to open a business there now. The environment's changing. And so, as he will probably move back, other people are looking at Argentina now and thinking, oh, maybe I need to go over there for a few weeks and check the place out because it sounds like, there's going to be opportunity there.
same here. I was seriously looking at Argentina to incorporate some company and going over there. El Salvador as well is interesting company
Yes,
with
so
their
yeah, because they
oh,
obviously are big into crypto, El Salvador. Yeah.
yeah. So it's sort of, so these businesses, once they sort of get their heads in and ducks in order, they it's very, very interesting to go in there. And I think that's the Western world, but I think the US now is opening up as well. I mean, I was quite negative to US.
Well, I just got back from the US the other day. I've been out there almost for a month, and everybody's, oh yeah, let's invest, let's do this, let's open this, let's open that. There's a lot of positivity and optimism around the economy now with the new government, and this is, I mean, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Some people like him, some people don't, and he's certainly rocking the boat. He's certainly bringing change, which some people don't like. Which is fine. I mean, some people like it, some people don't. But if you look at the policies, when he's talking about securing the border, well, I don't think any country wants people just coming in with no ID. Um, it's we have them here in England. They're coming over on boats every day, and they're letting them in, and they're letting them out the prisons in France, and they're putting them on a boat, and they're coming into the UK, and they either let them roam around or they put them in the Holiday Inn Express, give them 3 meals a day and some money and a cell phone. And who's paying for this? The British taxpayer. Unfortunately, this is happening.
Problem is, I mean, yeah, I mean that's politics, but and the problem is that if you treat the people that live in your country worse than the people that you take in, you got to get into trouble, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which country you are. Sooner or later, the people out there help to build it up. If you don't treat them well enough, and you just take in a lot of immigrants from no matter where they come from, and you give them more advantages and help them out, and the people that have built it don't feel that, then
Or they
you're going to
leave.
get into
And
trouble
this is
sooner or
what's
later.
happening here in the UK right now. A lot of millionaires and multimillionaires have already left. Others are about to leave. A lot of young people are leaving. And the favorite places seem to be United States, parts of South America, Dubai, Singapore. They're going to other countries. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and she was telling me that her son is living in Tibet. I said, "Oh, how come he's there?" Well, to live out there cost him 250 English pounds a month,
Wow.
and he lives well. It's a nice apartment. He eats well and everything. He's teaching English as a foreign language. He's making good money. He's got a nice lifestyle. It's very relaxed out there. This is a young man that could have been living in the UK and contributing to the British economy. No, he chose to go and live in Tibet, of all places. Um,
Interesting choice.
yeah, so it's the world today. You can connect with people very easily and see opportunities. Airfares are fairly cheap compared to the past. You can jump on some of these low cost airlines and go almost anywhere, and explore the world.
But it's
Uh,
the same. It's the same with business. It's interesting to you should mention that, because what happens if you take a bigger company, right? And what happens if the company starts become bad? People, um, you see that the company is going the wrong way. They're starting to lose money. So who leaves the company first? It's always the good people, right? The people that are the good reasons. So the people you want to have left, those are the ones that runs off the first. And what you have left, the people that are, well, yeah, to be honest, they're maybe not the people that is going to help bring the company forward. And the same thing happens in countries. If the country's not going the right way, who leaves the first? Well, the best people or the most creative people leaves first, just like in business.
Yeah, it's happened all the time. I remember when I was in high school in Italy at the international school, this whole thing in Iran started where Khomeini came in and there was a bit of a revolution there. And the headmaster comes into my classroom one day with this young man called Shahriar. He just arrived from Iran. He spoke very little English. He was running around the school with a Persian English dictionary. And he became a friend of mine. In fact, I just met up with him for the first time in 42 years in Los Angeles the other week.
Wow, good.
And he was in Italy for a few years. His father, they were quite a wealthy family from Iran. They saw what was happening. They left. Okay. They set up a business selling Persian carpets in Milan, and they did that for a while. He eventually moved to America and completed high school and university over there. And now he has a thriving business selling suits, men's suits.
Wow, yeah.
Americans, and he has some designers in Italy. They design the suits, and then they get them made and they sell them. He's a big showroom in Los Angeles, and he's doing very well. Now he could have stayed in Iran and helped build that economy. No, he left, and now he's building the American economy. And this is something that happened 40 plus years ago. But today, where you want to find out what life is like in Tibet, you go on YouTube and type in life in Tibet, and I bet you there's some vloggers in there that are living in Tibet and show you how they live and what they do for a living. And that may inspire someone to say, you know what, I'm going to get on an airplane, go to Tibet for a month and see if I can start doing something out there.
Yeah, but
Uh,
see, that's what countries don't understand. That basically there's something called the flag theory, right? Go where they treat you the best, and that's what people don't understand because I mean, if a country don't treat its citizens the right way, they're gonna leave, right? And the world is so global and so easy now. You can previously you weren't able to see it. I mean, you couldn't go to YouTube and see what's life like in Tibet. You just gotta believe what people say. But now it's sort of so the competition has become global, even when it comes to people and where you want to live, where you want to do business. And I would say that 90% of the countries in the world haven't understood that. Yeah, there's a competition, but so countries like us in Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, which have been countries that has been dealing with, yeah, we have a great social network and you can all these kind of things like free schooling and things like that. Things have become a lot worse the last 20 years. So now it's not as good as it was, and it's getting worse and worse every year. So now all of a sudden the proposal isn't that good anymore. So that's why people are starting looking elsewhere, same as in the UK.
Well, it's the same. It's the same with companies. I mean, if you're working for a company and things aren't going so well, you can easily start finding out what it's like in the company next door, and then move. I mean, I think what social media has done, it's made life transparent. And so as transparency has come to the world, I mean, I was talking to a very wealthy individual. I had a meeting with him in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, and he was telling me he has made a lot of money, but he's been under the radar for many years making all this money. But now he has the need to go out there and tell his story because his story, other people are starting to tell his story. And he said, I want to be able to control the narrative about my story. So I'm starting, I only just put a LinkedIn profile up the other week, he says to me. And this is a guy with quite a few $1 billion.
Wow.
So, you need, and I tell young people this, you need to have a social media footprint, a digital footprint, and you need to build that as soon as possible. Even if you're 14, 15 years old, bear in mind that people, when someone's comes in contact with you for the first time, whether they're thinking of dating you or whether they're thinking of doing business with you or employing you in their company, companies and people do research on people. They Google people's names. They go on their Facebook profile, their Instagram. They want to see what kind of stuff you're posting, what kind of people you're interacting with, what kind of things you say or on camera or blogs or whatever, you know. So, if you don't have a social media profile, you need to build this digital footprint and be in control of it because it can be a great marketing tool for yourself and for whatever you do. Build your own brand
Yeah, it's the
with
same in
all
business.
that. Yeah,
I mean, some businesses are totally off grid. I know a couple of businesses that yeah, they're not online at all, and they still do okay. But the future, if you want to live in the next 5, 10 years, you got to be online. It's just one of those things. At least have a present.
yeah, exactly. So let's talk about trends. What trends and opportunities do you see in today's merging economies and in the world today? I mean, what trends are there that you've spotted that you think are good ones to maybe invest in or learn about and take advantage of?
I know I got asked this question. Maybe it was 5 or 10 years ago, and I'm still in. I was right then in the sectors, and I'm still in the same kind of. I would say health and security. That's two big areas that are
Okay.
they're still very important, and those are quite wide fields, or broad fields. I would say you can do a lot of things in health, you can do a lot of things in security, but if you just look at how the world is, people are getting more sicker, and also the world is getting less secure with wars and other things like that. So if you find things, but even if you don't disregard war, you have the privacy issues with people being traced all over the place, and so I think things within health and security is still sectors that I look at personally because they're so broad and wide that I think, I mean, you can think that AI is really important or crypto is important, but you can do things with those technologies within the health or the security sector. So that's sort of
I
those
mean, these fitness
areas.
trackers, for example, that track your blood,
Yeah.
the oxygen in your blood and your heartbeat and how many steps you do. I mean, that's I find it fascinating, always checking my steps every day, uh, and
Yeah, to let you know if you're dying or not. It's perfect.
yeah, and it's amazing sometimes, you think you come to the end of the day and you think, well, I didn't do many steps today, and you look at your phone and it says, oh, you did 8,500 steps. Oh, how did that happen?
Yes.
Well, other days you think you've done a lot of steps, but then your phone tells you you haven't. So it's interesting to see that and to be able to measure and have those metrics. Um,
Yeah, someone actually told me, I can't remember where I found it, but it was said that whatever's measured gets improved.
yes.
Right. So if you measure your health, and that's what we do with business when we turn around as well. You got to measure things, see what works and what doesn't work, and then you can improve that.
Yeah, and with technology today, we can measure a lot more health parameters. I mean, they talk, oxygen in your blood and all sorts of things. Having these gadgets in your home is it's not too expensive. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, you'd have to buy all this machinery and the machinery was big and where were you going to put it and how you're going to use it. But today, these devices are available and they're not expensive. Everybody
Yeah,
can.
the challenge with this, and the same with businesses as well, is that you have the knowledge, but it's actually the execution that's some of the issues. I mentioned that previously. That's why I went into buying my own companies.
Right.
You can have a fitness watch like I have, right, and tell me how many steps I do, and tell you I didn't sleep well tonight. And you have a lot of information, but the problem is acting upon it and actually doing something. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges that we have, both privately and in business. We know a lot of information, but actually getting it done or executing on it, that is a different
Okay, now
matter.
that's a very interesting point there, Matt, because okay, so let's say my watch tells me I slept 7 hours, but my REM sleep was 35 minutes. And the REM sleep is really the important bit. So the question I would ask myself is, okay, well, how can I improve my REM sleep? Is it to do with how I eat? Did I not exercise enough? Am I sleeping on the wrong mattress? You know, ask yourself those questions so then you
Yeah.
can, oh, it's the mattress. Okay, well then what type of mattress do I need to, oh, you need mattress with magnets on it because it grounds you and that improves your REM. I'm not saying that's the case, but I mean, let's say
Yeah.
that is the thing. Okay, well then where can I buy a mattress with magnets on it? And then you go online and you start researching and there's like 10 different types and one costs £1,000 and another costs £3,000. What's the difference between the one at £1,000? And you start doing your research. And then, as you say, you execute and you buy the mattress, it gets delivered, you put it on your bed, you sleep, you wake up the next morning, it tells you you've had 3 hours of REM sleep. Oh, good. I've gone from half an hour to 3 hours. So this thing works. And
I
you're
think
right.
that's quite unique though, because a lot of people, what I found out, that most people, they know what they have to do, but they don't do it. Or they just complain, yeah, I don't sleep well. Yeah, but have you tried to figure out why? Yeah, I know it's because of this, but they still don't do anything. It
Well,
happens.
as I was saying, and I say in my book, Be Aware But Don't Care, people are shut in a cube. And they're sort of in this box, this cube, and they don't realize that they can change. And for your life to change, you have to change. As Jim Rohn said back in the day, the famous motivational speaker, he said, "For things to change, you need to change. For things to get better, you need to get better." And that phrase is so true. Um, but people kind of think that their life is governed by the prime minister or by the president. Uh,
Yeah,
and
that is true.
people fall over in their house in America and they blame Trump.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, what's the president of the United States to do with you falling over in your house? I mean, and people don't take responsibility for their lives and realize that, hey, what, something? You can change. And you can change right now. You have the power to do that. God gave each one of us free will, which is the power to make decisions. And, we want to change our future. You can't change the past, but you can create that future by taking action today. And yes, gathering the information is important, gathering the right information. But then, as you say, you need to execute.
I mean, I normally say business wise that I think I can go into the most any company and make it better. Uh, it doesn't matter what kind of size or within industry. The reason being is the major issue is they haven't executed on a lot of things that they know they need to execute on. So I think that's one of the keys to actually success is you don't always have to do everything. You just do something, right? And to get you in the right direction. I think that's a key for any business
Now,
or personal development in anywhere.
yeah. Now let's talk about coaching because you've got someone that's got a business, and one of the key issues with someone that owns a business is that very often the hairdresser opens a hairdressing salon, and he works in the hairdressing salon. And so now he's inside his business. It's like if you have a football team and you're the player, the coach is on the sideline. The coach from the outside can see what's wrong with the team that's actually on the field playing the game. But if you don't have a coach and you just, okay, let's just go and play football with my friends, you can't see what's going on. You're on the pitch. You're in the business. You need someone that's going to work on the business, a coach, someone from outside, as you do, someone from outside that can see what's wrong and give you that. And sometimes you don't need to make a major change.
No,
It's just a small tweak, and you can change things.
I think that's right for everything. One of my daughters, she's a personal trainer, and I said that if you want to go up to the gym and make some change, get a PT. If it's, I mean, they teach you how to do it right, but they're also an accountability partner to make sure you do it. And so just like you have a PT for training, you should have it for business. You should have it for anything that you want to do in life that you're serious about, because it's not a, yeah, it's just, it just helps you. And you take experience from other people that have done it before, and they help you to execute, which I once again said is it's one of the greatest challenges that we have.
Now, you're a great reader. You read a lot. You have been reading a lot. What are the 5 books that have influenced you the most?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I have another philosophy, and that's make things simple, right? We have a tendency to complex things, make things very complex. I like simplicity. So one of the books that I really like is the book called Who Moved My Cheese. It's written by Spencer Johnson. It's an old classic, you know, and in my household, everyone's seen the book. I've had the kids' version, so my kids know about it. So what I say is that now you're stuck in old cheese, I tell my kids, and they know exactly what it's all about. So that book I always give to all my businesses when I do turnarounds. That's the sort of mandatory reading. I mean, it's 100 pages with pictures on every other side. It's perfect for busy people.
Yeah.
Um, the other one I would do is The 1 Minute Manager by Kenneth Blanchard. It's also an old one, but if you learn that, I've used that principle in that book for how I train my kids, how I raise my kids, how I do business as a manager. And that book is just amazing when it comes to that area. And when it comes to mindset, one of the big books I read very early on in my life was actually Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I think that's everyone should read that book because it sort of gives you a bit of mindset how the world works. And there's tons of book within that area, but that's one of the easier, simpler ones to read.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of controversy around did the rich dad really exist? But at the end of the day,
It's a principle in the book, right?
yeah, it's a principle, and I love that book. The 4 quadrants that he talks about. It's key.
And like one of the questions that book came up with, like, where are most of your friends, right, in that quadrant? You know, it's that's why you're there as well. So, I mean, all of these books have some changes, but then there's another book that's called that I read recently. It's with Chris Voss. It's called Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, never split the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to that book so many times. I actually love it. I have it as an audiobook as well. Listen to it in the car.
Okay.
That's also one of those books that everyone should read specifically into business and sales, which you always are in one way, shape, form, or the other.
Yeah, because he was a hostage negotiator, wasn't he?
Yeah. So, and it's sort of, I used to read a book called Win-Win, or The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and you have the win-win philosophy. But I think the Never Split the Difference is actually better when it comes to just those kind of things. The last book, though, that I want to mention is it's actually a bit odd book. It's called Banker to the Poor by Mahabir Yunus. And for this podcast talks about thinking outside the box, right, and doing things differently. That
Yeah.
book is actually something that's really good because that's exactly what he did. It's Banker to the Poor is calling it's all about. He was the one that came up with microloans, in Africa and things. He gives them $100 and he changes their lives because they give loan for that, and they have a 99% payback ratio, which is better than all the banks in the Western world. And so that book, I read it also many years ago, but it's actually changed the way how to think because it's really great for helping you sort of think outside the box. So I would recommend to read it. Just it is an interesting story, but also interesting story in the way that he gets a lot of hassle he has to fight a lot of wars to, so to say, to succeed. But he also did a big change, helped a lot of people.
Yeah, well, obviously, there are nations that like to keep their people poor because they can control them. Um, and if there's a guy, lifting people out of poverty, I can understand why he's not going to be very popular.
And also banks. I mean, yeah. So bankers are the poor by. I just want to mention one last book, though. It's 6 books, I know, but it's You're the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
Also a very interesting book. It's all about mindset and how you can heal
Yeah,
and
Joe Spencer's an interesting guy. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
a
eh,
lot of research and science behind his findings as well. So
yeah, yeah, and that's the interesting thing about him. It's not one of these airy fairy books. It's backed by science. He's done a lot of research and put a lot of got a lot of scientists involved in his work to measure these things and come up with scientific papers to prove that the mind is an incredible thing. Uh,
so yeah, all these books have changed me in one way or another because I think it's so. I mean, there's tons of other books that are good, but this is sort of the top five, I would say, or top six.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, books are great, and of course today you can listen to books, you can read books, and now we have podcasts like this podcast. And so a lot of people, I find myself today, I don't read as much as I used to read because I listen to podcasts.
Yeah, same here.
And the beauty of podcasts is you can two times the speed, and you can listen to an hour podcast in half an hour. It's almost like speed listening.
Yeah, so I do. I have an Audible account which I've had for many years. So I do a lot of listening to audiobooks. So when I'm out traveling and things like that, I find it very easy to just have my headset on and I can listen to a book or two while I'm traveling anywhere. So it's really good.
Yeah. So how important, Mats, is this continuing education path that you're on helped you?
For me, it's been, I would say, 100% important because I was trained in IT, information technology, and now I'm now in a total different field, and it's continued education. I think it's important to do, and you just find your area that you enjoy, or change the area for that matter. It doesn't really matter as long as you keep on reading and challenging yourself and changing yourself to improve. I think that's important.
Yeah. So let's get to the last question. How is thinking outside the cube or box important in order to be successful today?
To be successful, I think it's mandatory. I don't think it's basically a choice. I mean, you can maybe just think inside a box and do the same thing. Let me give an example. I mean, I was in the Dominican Republic, and I was going to go scuba diving, right? And I went to this one road, and there was like literally 10 different scuba diving places, right? Just along the road, there was five on one side, five on the other. They all did scuba trips. They all cost the same, more or less. So why would I go to one compared to the other? There was nothing, no one thought outside the box. No one did any change. So it's just basically, okay, I like that person maybe a bit better than that one, or they said something cool. So, I mean, people have to differentiate in some way or another, or they have
Okay,
to
so
think outside the
let's
box.
take this as an example. So you've got these 10 scuba diving businesses. What would you do as a business turnaround guy to make your scuba diving business stick out more than the other nine?
I was actually thinking about that. It's sort of my mind always keeps on going that when it's
Yeah,
business wise.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what would I do? Well, firstly, I mean, I would make the whole booking experience easier and easier. And I would get, for me, that's as a tourist, when I'm going to the Dominican Republic, I would actually firstly, I would have someone that I would answer the phone when I called, because most of these people, they might answer on WhatsApp, but their English is terrible, or I want to speak to someone. So I would actually have someone that gives, because that's the first impression you get. I
Yes.
mean, either if you call them a book in advance, or if you're right there, have someone that gives you a smile, welcome you, and speaks good or decent enough that language. That will make a whole lot of difference, just simple things like that. And then I would make JVs or joint ventures with different kind of people. So I would make JVs with hotels, and I would give them that little extra. Small things like pick them up at a hotel. But when you pick them up, don't just pick them up. Have someone that can make a conversation, have some fun with them, or give them a small thing that doesn't cost you very much to do. These small, minor things doesn't cost you very much, but make a huge difference.
And also roll the camera and social media your business.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You know, just it's the old about the thing is once you get them in, you got to make the experience so good that they become ambassadors for your business going forward. So they speak to you, they give you that, and that's those small extra things, the small, I call them the wow factors, you know? And that's for any kind of business. Just make it that little different. It doesn't have to cost very much money. I had great examples of that when I'm out traveling, with these sort of things. I mean, I went to Dubai, and I spent tons of money on these activities. And I said, if you just did this, it would be 100 times more better. If you just did this, small kind of things that would differentiate you and make you stand out from the crowd and think outside the box. It's often easy, but it doesn't cost much money, but you just have to do it.
Yeah, and I think one interesting lesson I've learned talking to you today on this podcast is that most people and most businesses do not want to change.
No, that's right.
So if you're prepared to change and innovate, you're going to be, and as you said, you don't need to do something drastic. Even just some small changes can make that big difference. And so now your business is sticking out. Your scuba diving business is sticking out more than the other 9 on the same street. And you've got a long queue of people waiting to scuba dive with your business, and the others aren't. And I think that's really, really interesting that you said that.
Or just painting yellow, paint the whole thing yellow so it sort of sticks out color-wise for people just walking along. So just things that sticks out. But I think important, and if you think about yourself, it's all about personal experience. I think making the people that come and do that experience, make them feel well. It can be digital as well. You order something, you get an extra note in the box when you order, saying thank you for your order, or did you hear about this, or you get a smaller things like that, or just an email afterward thanking them, or simple things that will make you feel a bit extra special.
I think
That works with everyone.
I think the joint venture thing is clever. I mean, I remember going to we went to this outlet in Utah a few years ago, and we go into one shop and we bought some stuff, and they gave us a voucher for a 10% discount in another shop down the road. So immediately we said, "Oh, the sock shop, we got 10% discount." So we went to the sock shop, and then they gave us a voucher for 10% discount. No. So these 3 stores they did a joint venture, and so you made a purchase in one store and it drove you to the next one. And I thought that was very clever, to get
But
that going.
it's to change the mindset, right? Because sometimes when I get to businesses, right, and you said, yeah, why don't we uh, take or work with these guys? Yeah, but that's competition. They can take customers from me. And so people are so afraid and so protective,
Yeah,
they should
yeah.
try to open up and say, yeah, we might be competing with 20% of the business, but the other one, the two of you can have a synergy instead of competing. So people are a bit afraid, of, yeah, I don't want them to take into my business. And so I found that very few people are very open to sort of doing things like that, but it'll that makes the change.
Yeah, just make the experience better for your customers, and then roll the camera. Let them tell the story. Let them be your marketing people, so to speak.
Yeah, because if they have it on social media, they share it, they do it, they'll go around, and it's the best. I mean, it's nothing new, but it's the best thing to do. And then now you just have the social media part of it, and
Yeah, and as we said
it's it,
before,
right?
before you go on a trip today, you do some research and say, okay, I'm going to the Dominican Republic for a week. What can we do while we're there? Oh, let's go scuba diving. So you'll Google scuba diving or go on YouTube and whatever. And if the guy with the yellow suit comes up on YouTube and says, I'm a scuba diver at our scuba diving school, you've already found before you even get there. And so, that kind of outreach, I think, is important to tell your story. Again, going back to this world of of transparency, you wanna tell your story, but in order to do all those things, you need to have the right people, you need to have the right team, the right mindset, and I think that's really important too.